We have people in our communities who are so unhealthy that they're a danger to themselves and to others, and where there's nothing that we can do with them except put them in jail. We have to be separated from society for the safety of society. And that's a sad reality. But there's very few of those. Most people in jail are not in that category. What's the alternative? I don't have answers. I can't talk about what we used to have years ago. I'm from Woods Cree. We had Samagana, or Samaganist, and he walked alone. And if a Samaganist came in your camp, you put your head down because he shouldn't be there. Somebody must have done something wrong. And usually he carried a whip, and he'd come up to you and he'd touch you on both shoulders, just enough to embarrass you. And you knew next time he'd come, it wouldn't be just touching you on both shoulders with that coiled up whip. They were around until not too long ago when the RCMP showed up. So about 1950s would have been the last Samaganist we had. And I talked to his children. I never knew the man, but I talked to his children, and the Samaganist had told his children the hardest thing he had to do was to go to a community north of us and whip a man who'd been having sex with his own children. So we did have that system. But we didn't have the violence and everything that we've got today. Samaganist never had to deal with that. How do we deal with it today? My younger brother, I've had two brothers killed by drunk drivers. The younger one, not too long ago, was walking home. He'd been babysitting for his daughter who'd gone to bingo. And he was walking home after. And a drunk driver came across the road and hit him and kept going. My brother only lived a couple minutes. That man who did that, he'd lost his wife 6 months earlier. She died horribly from cancer. And he'd gone out drinking. He'd gone to his neighbor's. And the last thing he remembers is walking from his neighbor's house to his house, down the trail across the reserve. He woke up in the morning and the police were there. And there was damage on the front of his truck. And they found my brother's DNA on his truck. But he has no memory. He went to court and he pled guilty to impaired driving causing death. And I spoke at the sentencing. I wanted the judge to know who my brother was, about his children and his grandchildren. And I told the judge, I have no animosity towards this man. But that judge sent him to jail for 3 years. That jail sentence didn't help anybody. My brother didn't come back. His children never got their dad. His grandchildren didn't get their grandpa. Didn't help that man either. He was looking after his 13-year-old granddaughter. She lost her grandpa for 3 years. Didn't help him with his grief over losing his wife. Didn't help him with the trauma that he experienced by killing somebody by drinking and driving. Didn't help nobody. I was writing a book called Peace and Good Order about the justice system, and I wanted to talk about that, how that sentence was so useless. So I reached out to that man. His name was Hillary Cook. And I had some questions. I wanted to make sure what I said was correct. I thought that 13-year-old girl was his daughter, but it was his granddaughter. So, we corrected some things. He agreed to meet me, and we had coffee. And when coffee was done and the interview was done, he said he'd like to go into schools and talk to youth about drinking and driving. A couple days later, I got a phone call from the high school, Students Against Drinking and Driving. I'd written a book called Firewater, And they wanted me to come talk to them about alcohol. And I said, sure, if I can bring Hillary with me. And they agreed. So we went to the high school. And we stood shoulder to shoulder in front of those kids. And I talked about what it felt like to lose a brother to a drunk driver. And Hillary talked about what it felt like to wake up in the morning and being told you killed somebody. And we had an impact. Those kids listened. And Hillary started to do something real, something that makes a difference. We did another presentation to Mothers Against Drunk Drivers in Pine House. And again, we stood shoulder to shoulder. And by doing that, he's earning redemption. He's paying back to the community for the harm that he did. So when we have somebody comes before the court who's done something that hurt somebody or hurt the community, instead of sending them to jail or finding ways to punish them, we should ask them, what can you do to fix what you did? We should ask the victim, what can he do to fix what he did to you? How can we make this better? In each case, we'll have a different answer. So I can't tell you what to do. We have to start working at healing. And I think that's where we start. We start at that point where somebody takes responsibility for what they did. The justice system is designed to not take responsibility. The whole system is designed so that you deny what you did and force the Crown to prove that you did whatever it is you're charged with. And you are never, ever to say, I did it. It's really rare that somebody would come to court and stand in front of the judge and say, Your Honor, I take responsibility for what I did. I'm sorry. I've seen it once or twice. And every time I saw it, I knew I would never see that man in court again. Would you see somebody come to court and they're full of excuses? It's not my fault. It's colonization. It's not my fault. She made me mad. It's not my fault. And then you hear them in jail and they say, my lawyer screwed me. The judge hated me. It's not my fault. We've got to start taking responsibility for what we did. And those guys who make excuses, you see them over and over and over again. We create a culture of, I did wrong. I'm sorry. How can I fix it? And then we're on the right path, I think. I think that's the way we have to go. But it's going to take a huge culture shift. And justice isn't going to make that shift for us.